15 hip-hop records tied to some of the most important films of the 1980s are sitting in record crates right now, collecting dust, waiting for somebody who actually knows the culture to put them back on. These tracks didn't just soundtrack movies, they documented a movement before the industry knew how to sell it. Number 1, Grandmaster Melly Mel and the Furious 5, Beat Street Breakdown. 1984.
Street, the king of the beat. You see her rocking that beat from across the street. And
the film Beat Street hit theaters and captured South Bronx block party culture before Hollywood could sanitize it. Grandmaster Melly Mel and the Furious 5 delivered Beat Street Breakdown, a track that crackled with the same urgency as the message, but aimed it directly at the b-boy world exploding on New York sidewalks. Production from Arthur Baker gave it that cold mechanical pulse the early electro era carried. The record reportedly moved significant units but got buried under the crossover conversations swirling around Melly Mel's more famous catalog. Do you remember catching Beat Street at the Saturday matinee and walking out feeling different? This was the track underneath that feeling. Number 2, Afrika Bambaataa and Soul Sonic Force, Frantic Situation. Also from the Beat Street soundtrack, Bambaataa's Frantic Situation operated on a different frequency entirely. Where other tracks on that record leaned into rap convention, Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation Collective pushed the sound into electronic territory that felt like science fiction playing through a boombox. The production was built for movement, for the dancers who took over subway platforms and community centers from the Bronx to Brooklyn. Most casual fans associate Bambaataa with Planet Rock and stop there. Frantic Situation is the deeper cut that real heads recognize as proof his range in '84 was still years ahead of where mainstream hip-hop was going. Number 3, Us Girls, same Beat Street soundtrack completely overlooked. The rare female voices anchoring a hip-hop film soundtrack in the early 80s, and that fact alone deserves a full stop. The group brought a street-level energy that matched everything the male crews on that project were doing, but industry attention and radio rotation defaulted to the louder, more commercial names surrounding them. Female MCs were building the foundation in real time and getting minimal credit for it. If you were paying close attention in '84, you heard them. If you weren't, consider this your discovery moment and treat it accordingly. Number 4, Arthur Baker, Breaker's Revenge. If you found this on a white label in a mid-90s crate, you already understand its value without further explanation. Number 5, Grandmaster Melly Mel.
Survival, they smile in your face and they talk behind your back.
And Duke Booty, The Message 2, Survival, a sequel to one of the most consequential records in hip-hop history, and it landed on the Beat Street soundtrack where many listeners missed it entirely. Duke Booty co-wrote the original message, and his return alongside Melly Mel for this follow-up carried the same social weight: poverty, survival, the invisible walls of inner city life pressed into rhyme before the documentary cameras arrived. The Message 2 never received the critical attention its predecessor earned, but the writing and the production hold up under any honest examination. Context is everything with this record. You have to know what came before it to fully understand what it meant to hear it again. Number 6, The Glove and David Stores, Reckless. From the Break-In soundtrack, The Glove was a Los Angeles DJ who reportedly worked alongside Ice-T in the early West Coast hip-hop underground before Ice-T's name carried mainstream recognition. Reckless is exactly the kind of track that gets buried between bigger names on a double-sided soundtrack and never finds its way onto any retrospective playlist or reissue discussion. The collaboration between The Glove and David Stores represented a West Coast sensibility intersecting with the electro-funk sound that was dominating hip-hop film projects in '84. Overlooked at release, it remains a collector circuit item for people who understand what that era was actually producing outside of New York. Number 7, LL Cool J, I Can't Live Without My Radio, 1985.
Yo, believe me, I like it loud. I'm the man with the box that can rock the crowd. Walking down the street to the hardcore beat.
Crush Groove soundtrack. LL Cool J was reportedly 17 years old when this record dropped, and the confidence in that vocal performance still sounds unreasonable by any standard. Rick Rubin's stripped-down production, essentially a drum machine and a boombox metaphor transformed into a full hip-hop manifesto, gave LL a platform that Def Jam used to announce itself as a serious force. The Crush Groove film was loosely based on Def Jam's own origin story, and this track was the proof of concept that the label's approach was going to change the industry. We remember exactly where we were standing when this came out of the speakers. Right here, halfway through this list, if this is bringing back exactly what you needed to remember today, hit that subscribe button for Hip Hop Legends Archives. We keep sourced, verified, golden era history alive every week. Heads who know where to find us. More records coming, starting with number 8. Number 8, Kurtis Blow, If I Ruled the World. Also Crush Groove, 1985. Kurtis Blow had been building his foundation since Christmas time and the breaks in the very early 80s, and by the time If I Ruled the World appeared on the Crush Groove soundtrack, he was functioning as an elder statesman of the form, not yet 40, but already carrying legacy weight in every bar. The track is aspirational, politically conscious in its framing, and built with a smoothness that bridged his earlier work toward the more polished mid-80s production sound. Nas would revisit the same conceptual territory a decade later and earn enormous acclaim. Kurtis Blow planted that flag first, credit accordingly. Number 9, Fat Boys, All You Can Eat. The Fat Boys were moving crowds, selling shows, and recording tracks that connected with audiences far outside New York, and All You Can Eat captured their ability to blend humor with genuine hip-hop craft without sacrificing either quality in the process. The human beatbox work from Buff Love was already being recognized as technically innovative, and the record's comedic framing landed because it came from people who understood timing as well as they understood rhythm. The industry filed them under novelty and kept moving. Real heads in 85 knew the difference. That distinction still matters. Number 10, Beastie Boys, She's On It, also from the Crush Groove soundtrack.
Number 1 in her division.
In 85, the Beastie Boys had not yet released License to Ill and were still operating as a loud, disruptive energy that the rock-rap crossover hadn't fully figured out how to categorize or sell. She's On It is a harder, faster version of what they were assembling, and its placement on the Crush Groove soundtrack put it in front of a hip-hop audience watching the group's evolution in actual real time. The record gets consistently overlooked in their catalog because License to Ill arrived the following year and absorbed every available unit of oxygen in the room. Revisit the sequence, the development is worth tracking. Number 11, Crush Groove All-Stars, Crush Groovin'. The assembled cast track on the Crush Groove soundtrack brought multiple voices from the Def Jam roster together on a single record in a format the era understood as a collective statement of strength and shared identity. It represented the label's belief in its own roster's ability to share space without any single presence collapsing the others. These collaboration tracks from 80s film soundtracks rarely receive individual attention because they function as sum of parts records rather than spotlight moments. Crush Groovin' holds together better than most from that format, and it documents where the label stood in 85 better than any press release from that period. Number 12, Ice-T Colors, 1988.
Well, just a gangster, stalking, living life like a firecracker, quick as my fuse, been dead as a death back.
Dennis Hopper's Colors was a film about Los Angeles gang culture that mainstream America was not prepared to process with any honesty, and Ice-T's title track arrived as documentation rather than entertainment. Production from DJ Aladdin gave it a dark, deliberate weight that matched the subject matter without dramatizing it. Radio resistance was real. Reportedly, some markets refused airplay based on content concerns alone. That resistance is precisely why Colors matters historically. It proved that hip-hop could carry a journalist's responsibility when journalism was not going into those neighborhoods. The culture heard it. The gatekeepers flinched. The record survived both reactions and grew larger for the friction. Number 13, Decadent Dub Team, Six Gun.
If you want want to understand.
From the Less Than Zero soundtrack, 1987, Less Than Zero was a film built primarily around rock and new wave sounds, which makes Six Gun's presence genuinely unusual for the era and for that particular project. The Decadent Dub team operated at the intersection of dub, hip-hop, and electronic production in a way that resisted easy genre placement in any conversation happening in '87. Most people who owned the Less Than Zero cassette probably didn't know what to do with this track on first listen. That initial confusion is its historical footnote and its actual value as a document of how wide the sonic edges were already stretching before anyone had language to describe the territory. Number 14, Run DMC, Beats to the Rhyme, Tougher Than Leather, 1988.
Here we go. Fiends on the corner and the drugs gonna flow. More money, money, money.
Run DMC's film as actors received mixed critical reception, but the soundtrack material they recorded for it carried some of their hardest edged work from that period. Beats to the Rhyme is a no-frills, drum-heavy demonstration of the group at full confidence, no rock crossover compromise, no pop concession built into the production. By '88, the dominant industry narrative around Run DMC had shifted toward Walk This Way and arena-level commercial success. Beats to the Rhyme pulled the conversation back to the corner where it started. Real heads recognized exactly what that decision meant and respected it without needing it explained. Number 15, LL Cool J, Going Back to Cali. Less Than Zero soundtrack, '87.
I don't think so. I'm going back to Cali.
Going Back to Cali may be the most commercially successful record on this entire list, and it still qualifies as forgotten in its original context, tucked inside a film with a primarily rock-driven audience, produced by Rick Rubin with a looseness that felt almost cinematic by hip-hop production standards of that moment. LL delivered a performance built on pure confidence, nothing strained in the delivery, nothing forced in the cadence. The record crossed formats by proximity rather than by design, and then got absorbed into his catalog without the soundtrack context traveling alongside it into memory. Now you have the full picture. Put the film version back in rotation. That is the real history. 15 records across 8 years of hip-hop cinema that the algorithm never surfaced and the radio countdowns never revisited. This is Hip Hop Legends Archives doing exactly what this channel exists to do. Preserve the culture, source the facts, and bring back what the industry left behind. If you lived through these soundtracks, or you are discovering right now what the golden era actually sounded like in full depth, drop a like and subscribe and tell us in the comments which of these 15 you remember from the first time, or which one you are about to track down tonight. We fact check everything to keep the culture's history straight. Until next time, peace, love, and hip hop. And that is why these records still deserve to be heard again.